Have you ever experienced a moment so unexpected, so life-altering, that it completely shifted your perspective on who you are and the relationships you hold dear? This story is not just about the complexities of family dynamics, but also the hidden emotions and forbidden connections that can arise when we least anticipate them. As you journey through this captivating tale, you'll witness how a simple family visit turned into a whirlwind of emotions, revelations, and decisions that could never be undone. Each moment is layered with tension, passion, and the weight of moral choices, offering profound lessons on boundaries, self-awareness, and the cost of unspoken desires. Stay with us until the very end to uncover the life-altering conclusion and reflect on the deeper truths this story holds, truths that may resonate with your own experiences. This isn't just a narrative, it's an invitation to explore the complexities of human relationships and what they teach us about ourselves. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I encourage you to click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on today's topic. If you enjoy the content, please comment 1 below. If it doesn't resonate with you, leave a 0. Your feedback is crucial as it helps me create better videos that align with your interests. Now, let's get started. Everything shifted in ways I could never have anticipated when my nephew Felipe arrived for a visit. At just 23 years old, he was the epitome of youthful energy and vitality. Standing tall with broad shoulders, a chiseled frame, and a confidence that seemed to radiate from within, Felipe was impossible to ignore. His striking features, dark, expressive eyes and a smile that could brighten even the gloomiest of days, made him appear larger than life. It was as though he had stepped out of a dream, and I found myself captivated by how much he had transformed. Felipe was no longer the awkward teenager I remembered. He had become a man in every sense of the word. Felipe was the son of my older brother, who lived in another city far from us. It had been years since we had seen him, and the years had wrought a metamorphosis that left me stunned. The boy who used to laugh endlessly over silly jokes now stood before me with a calm, magnetic presence that seemed to command the air around him. The sheer surprise of it caught me off guard, and as I opened the door to greet him, I felt an unexpected rush of emotion. "Aunt Carla!" he exclaimed with a wide grin as he stepped forward, wrapping me in a hug that was so firm and warm it left me momentarily breathless. His embrace lingered, strong and intimate, filling me with an unspoken warmth that spread through me like wildfire. I could feel the strength in his arms, the heartbeat in his chest, and something about it unsettled me in a way I couldn't quite explain. "Felipe," I managed to say, pulling back slightly to look at him, my voice faltering under the weight of unspoken emotions. "You've grown so much. I can hardly believe it's you." My words felt inadequate, but how could I explain the swirl of feelings his presence had stirred within me? His piercing eyes locked onto mine with a gaze that was both familiar and unervingly intense, as though he could see right through me. The first few days of Felipe's visit were filled with warmth and laughter, though a quiet undercurrent of tension lingered beneath the surface. He blended seamlessly into our home, bringing with him an energy that seemed to rejuvenate everyone around him. He spent hours talking with his cousins, sharing stories about his college experiences, his dreams, and his plans for the future. His voice carried an excitement and optimism that was contagious, and I found myself listening more intently than I expected, drawn to the way his words seemed to paint vivid pictures of the life he was building. With my husband Marcos away on a business trip, it was just me, the girls, and Felipe at home. There was an ease to our days, filled with simple moments of laughter and connection. Yet, even in those quiet, ordinary moments, I couldn't shake the awareness of Felipe's presence. It was as though his mere existence had cast a spell over the household, and I found myself noticing him in ways that made me feel both intrigued and unnerved. Then, one balmy summer evening, the dynamic in our home shifted completely. It began like any other night, with me going through my nightly routine of walking through the house to ensure everything was in its place before bed. It was a habit I had developed over the years, and I thought little of it as I wandered through the house in my nightgown. The girls were used to it, and with Marcos often away, I had grown comfortable in the solitude of my evenings. The night was quiet, the air heavy with the warmth of summer, and the soft glow of the kitchen light created a serene atmosphere as I poured myself a glass of water. Lost in thought, I didn't hear him at first. It wasn't until a faint sound broke the stillness that I turned and saw Felipe standing in the doorway. The sight of him stopped me in my tracks. He was barefoot, his hair slightly tousled, and his expression was unreadable. But it was his eyes that held me captive, dark and intense. They seemed to linger on me in a way that made my heart race. The thin fabric of my nightgown suddenly felt like too little, and I instinctively crossed my arms over my chest, desperate to shield myself from his gaze. "Sorry, Aunt," Felipe murmured, his voice low and almost apologetic. "I just needed a glass of water." His tone was steady, but there was something in the way he spoke, an undercurrent of emotion that sent a shiver through me. I tried to steady myself, forcing a small smile as I gestured toward the counter. "Of course, Felipe. Make yourself at home." The words came out softer than I intended, and as he stepped closer, the small kitchen seemed to shrink around us. The air grew heavier, charged with something unspoken and electric. Felipe moved with a quiet confidence that made the space between us feel smaller and smaller. I could feel the heat radiating from him, his presence overwhelming in a way that left me unmoored. He was so close now that I could hear the faint hitch in his breath, and my own heart began to pound in response. "Aunt Carla," he began, his voice husky and almost reverent. "You're so beautiful." The words hit me like a bolt of lightning, rendering me momentarily speechless. Before I could even process what he had said, he closed the distance between us, and his lips met mine. The kiss was sudden, fierce, and all-consuming, igniting a fire within me that I hadn't known existed. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced, raw, passionate, and entirely forbidden. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to get lost in it, the world around me fading as my body betrayed me, responding to the intensity of his touch. But then reality came crashing down on me, sharp and unrelenting. The enormity of what was happening hit me like a tidal wave, and I pulled away, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I stared at him in disbelief. "Felipe," I whispered, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger, fear, and confusion. He stepped back, his face a mixture of longing and regret, and the silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, trembling, my mind racing with a torrent of emotions, shame, guilt, and an unnameable longing that I tried desperately to suppress. Everything had changed in that moment, and I knew there was no way to undo what had been done. The weight of it all pressed down on me, suffocating and inescapable, as the fragile normalcy of our lives shattered around us. "This can't happen," I said, my voice trembling, barely above a whisper. My words carried a desperation, an urgent plea to bring us both back to reality. Felipe took a step back, his eyes burning with a mix of desire and conviction. "Aunt, I know you felt it too," he said, his voice soft but unwavering. "We can't deny it." I couldn't bear the intensity of his gaze, the raw emotion pouring out of him. Without another word, I fled the kitchen, my heart pounding so fiercely it felt as if it might burst from my chest. Yet, even as I hurried away, I couldn't escape the memory of his lips on mine, the searing heat of his touch. It lingered, haunting me with its forbidden allure. I knew it was wrong, profoundly wrong, but an unrelenting part of me craved more. The days that followed were unbearable. The tension between us became a living thing, present in every glance, every accidental brush of skin as we moved through the house. I avoided him as best I could, throwing myself into household chores and focusing on the girls. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't ignore his presence. It was magnetic, pulling me toward him with a force I was powerless to resist. Felipe, for his part, seemed determined to close the gap between us. He would find excuses to linger near me, his eyes lingering just a moment too long, his voice low and filled with unspoken emotion. I told myself it was just my imagination, that I was reading too much into his actions, but deep down, I knew better. One afternoon, when the girls were at school and the house was quiet, I found myself alone in the laundry room, folding clothes. I tried to focus on the mundane task, hoping to calm the storm inside me. But the sound of the door closing behind me shattered any semblance of peace. I turned to see Felipe standing there, his expression intense. "Aunt Carla," he said, his voice quiet but resolute. "We need to talk." If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. My pulse quickened. I could feel the walls closing in, the air growing heavier with every passing second. "There's nothing to talk about, Felipe," I replied, my voice trembling. What happened was a mistake. He stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate, his eyes locking onto mine. I backed away instinctively until the cold metal of the washing machine pressed against my back. "It wasn't a mistake," he said, his tone firm, yet filled with a vulnerability that caught me off guard. "You felt it too. I know you did." I opened my mouth to protest, to deny everything, but the words wouldn't come. His gaze held me captive, a mix of desire and pleading that left me disarmed. Before I could muster a response, he closed the distance between us, his lips capturing mine in a kiss that was both tender and urgent. This time, I didn't push him away. I didn't have the strength or the will to resist. The kiss deepened, igniting a fire that consumed us both. His hands roamed my body with a breathless urgency, and before I knew it, I was responding in kind, my fingers tracing the contours of his chest. "This is crazy," I murmured against his lips, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and desire. "I know," Felipe replied, his hands sliding down my back, pulling me closer. "But I can't stay away from you." In that moment, all reason, all morality, all sense of consequence vanished. We gave in to the passion that had been building between us, succumbing to it right there in the laundry room. The hum of the washing machine filled the air, masking the sounds of our moans and whispered names. It was forbidden, wrong in every way imaginable, yet it was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Raw, intense, and utterly consuming. Afterward, the weight of what we had done crashed down on me like a tidal wave. I pulled away from him, my hands trembling as I adjusted my clothes. "This can't happen again," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of guilt and desperation. Felipe nodded, but his eyes betrayed him. They were filled with longing, a silent plea that spoke louder than any words. "I know, Aunt," he said softly, "but I don't know if I can promise that." The days that followed were an emotional whirlwind. We tried to act normal in front of the girls, but every stolen glance, every accidental touch was charged with tension. The guilt I felt was suffocating, but it was matched by an equally powerful desire that I couldn't suppress. We found ways to be alone, whether it was a brief moment in the backyard or an encounter in the hallway late at night. Each time, reason crumbled under the weight of our longing, and we gave in to the pull between us. Then, things became even more complicated. Marcos called, saying he would be returning earlier than planned. The news hit me like a punch to the gut, and the guilt I had been wrestling with intensified tenfold. Every time I looked at Felipe, I felt a sickening mix of desire and fear. What if Marcos found out? The thought was unbearable. The night before Marcos's return, the house was quiet. The girls were asleep, and the weight of what we had done hung heavy in the air. I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of what the future would hold. As if drawn by an invisible force, I found myself stepping out into the backyard, the cool night air doing little to calm my nerves. Felipe was already there, waiting for me. His presence under the moonlight was both comforting and tormenting. "Aunt Carla," he said softly, his voice carrying a mix of apology and longing. "We need to talk." I looked at him, my heart aching with 1,000 emotions. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to navigate the tangled web we had created. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again.